Babita, please introduce yourself to our lovely audience.
Hello, my name is Babita Devi. I'm the co-founder and chief commercial officer of a company called SXSW Studios. We're building a platform called 1956 Individuals, which is all to do with conversational AI avatars.
Tom?
Hi there, I'm Tom Lorimer. I'm the CEO of Passion Labs. We're an AI research and development lab for the creative industries. We worked with a number of big fashion houses, architectural practices, media houses. We're the AI partner for the BBC Studios, the FT, and I'm also part of the Agentic Working Group for UKAI.
Okay, wow, that was a whole load of different things.
Yeah.
We'll get onto that in a minute. Ben?
Great to be here. Thank you very much. I'm Benjamin Woollams, CEO and founder of a company called True Rights. We provide the infrastructure for creatives, rights holders to better own their digital identity and rights. So we also work with the BBC. We also work with SAG-AFTRA for frameworks and policies on how actors, influencers, celebrities can also protect their digital likeness and their content in this new era of AI.
I've been talking for many years about AI and creativity, long before anybody was really interested. We saw the problems coming, and I think anyone working in this space knows where we were heading. But as well as that, there was also incredible promise. I filmed with Synthesia just after they launched, and I mean, we know the scale they've reached now. But one of their great ideas back then, and I'm sure something they've been very successful at since, was for sports fans to be able to see the person that they love speaking in their native language so they could understand them. So there's enormous possibility for what AI can do for the creative industry. We also know there's huge challenges. Let's start on the positive side. Where do you see the greatest benefits having begun, and where do you think they're going? Because it really is early days for a lot of this. Babita, do you want to go first?
Yes, so we often talk about a category that we want to own, which is information that you can talk to. So all the work that we do, whether it's building, we've built AI engineering for Bletchley Park, we've built the first AI Prime Minister, which is going into Museum of the Prime Minister.
AI Prime Minister, can you tell us a bit more about the AI Prime Minister?
It's, William Gladstone will be the first of 10 Prime Ministers that's going into a museum in London, very close to Westminster, which is only going to be featuring 10 most prominent Prime Ministers. I'm not allowed to share the other 9 at the moment.
Right, okay. So you can have conversation with the Prime Minister? How does this work?
Coming back to your question, so it's all about how do you give people a way to access information in a conversational way. We never say we're bringing people back to life, coming back to your ethics piece earlier. We only ever say we're giving you a way to access information in a very conversational way in your native language. So we're giving people a way to access that. And so that's where we are working. We built a 13th century queen for Leeds Castle, so you can go and speak to her in the chapel at Leeds Castle. And really, the vision behind the project is how do we give people the most accurate interpretation of that Queen Eleanor. So that's in terms of where we're creating a true likeness to individuals, but again, very much about giving people access to information. The other side of it is we're working with the NHS in the UK, so we're building avatars where patients can speak to these avatars ahead of their appointment, for example. So very different use cases, but it's all about how do you give people access to information.
And those avatars would be doctors, would they?
No, so one is everything we're doing, and again, timing with this conversation, is how do we free up the receptionist's time so they can focus on the most important tasks, and the avatar is there to help do all the other stuff that they don't need to get involved in. The second product is a pre-appointment consultation avatar. So when you go to your doctor, in the UK, you only ever get 10 minutes for your appointment. You actually would speak to the avatar before you go and see your doctor. That information then goes to the doctor before you go and see them. So it's those two products.
And I'd imagine it won't take long for this to actually feel like quite a normalised experience.
Well, it's not that long ago when there was no voice, right? We're all using voice right now. It's become very normal. We're all talking to our gadgets and our computers. So it's only a matter of time, I think, before avatars become a part of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I remember years ago going to film with nurses being trained to be empathetic, and they were using, it was an iPad over a dummy that was brought to life. And so they were practicing interacting with the iPad and the dummy. And there was obviously something that felt really strange. How on earth is that going to bring out human empathy? But actually they were all finding it really beneficial, because otherwise what were they doing? They could talk to the dummy.
Exactly.
It's sort of, you balance out what the alternative is.
I think the most important part is language. That when you are able to communicate with people in a language that they understand, that's a really big part of how avatars can really change the way an individual might do something versus an avatar might do
Yeah,
something.
and getting it right for the people you're talking to. How about you two?
Well, I think firstly, it's very refreshing to talk about it from a positive lens. I think I was on another panel yesterday, a legal panel, and so it's very copyright heavy, very around protections, very legislation based. But I think from a creativity point of view, and I come at it from brand and talent perspective, I think we've seen three kind of key factors of this. This is scale, hyper personalization, and longevity. To your point about avatars, you've seen the ability for brands to tap into what their identity means now with AI. Lidl did a great campaign about a year and a half ago where they let consumers come and create with their own AI engine and create their own products. And it was something like 16 million searches done in about 3 weeks. And then they took the most relevant and high priority searches and they built the product. And so they use their brand identity colours of yellow, red and blue. And so that's a great way that brands can tap into something for hyper-personalisation for users. We've also seen some actors, Val Kilmer, who's now there's a film being created about him and using archive footage where he's still being able to be existing within kind of film and content, even unfortunately after he's passed. And I think that's great for the purposes of that. And then also we've seen, I guess, new ways that talent has started to lean into AI. And so we are seeing avatars, we are seeing likeness, we are seeing, if anyone saw the Adidas World Cup campaign, if any big football fans in here, PepsiCo and Pepsi used to do a great campaign where they bring together all of the amazing footballers into one advert, which must have been so expensive.
Yeah.
And now they brought back David Beckham, Zinedine Zidane, some of the most kind of legacy-based footballers ever to play against kind of street footballers within their new World Cup ad. And this is something that you couldn't have done before. So I think creativity is being unlocked with longevity, scale, and hyper-personalisation.
Yeah, on that though, what does this mean for people protecting their own images? Do people have a fee that is this is what you charge to use an AI version of me? How does it work?
Exactly that. So there's two licenses now. One to license your likeness, so the ability to actually license my face into the process of creating content. And then secondly, that content is created and then you're licensing that content as well. So SAG-AFTRA is a great example of this. They have a rate card and it's more expensive if you want to use the AI version of an actor versus the actual going to a session and having an actor there. So it's a 1.5% charge on what they traditionally have. If you want to create a new model, it's going to be more expensive as well. So I think what they're trying to do is make sure that you still have that legacy piece of actors being used, being on set, etc., but also giving the optionality that if people do want to create avatars, they can do so.
Yeah.
But it's frameworks, it's attribution, everything that you need protection around. But I think that technical infrastructure is meant to be there for enforcement and everything else.
I wonder if the cost will stay that way round. And in the way that we've seen AI influencers get famous and loads of followers, are we going to get AI actors become really famous with lots of followers? And who owns them? I guess a tech company owns them. Someone will have created the avatar.
Well, this is the concern. I think as an actor or any celebrity or rights holder, if you're going to go and work on Synthesia or 11 Labs or HeyGen or any of the others, then you have to go to that platform, you have to upload your IP, set your preferences, you have 10 different code of conducts, platform policies, payment terms. Your IP is suddenly being dismantled into the industry. And if they're owning those likeness models or those AI avatars, well, what happens when they don't want to do it anymore? And I was on a panel with Alex from Synthesia yesterday, and they have great deletion clauses. And so they are very aware of protecting talent, but it comes down to interoperability. As a rights holder or a talent, if I'm going to be on 10 different tools, how do I manage that?
Yeah.
If I'm going to run campaigns or do advertisements, and I'm working with Nike on HeyGen, and I'm working with Adidas on Synthesia or whatever else it might be, how is that being consolidated?
Yeah.
How am I getting visibility into it?
Someone I was talking to the other day was asked whether they would be willing, it's a person who's on air, if they'd be willing to give their voice to be used for AI. And they were like, no way, absolutely no way. But actually, when you look at this in the longer term and the reality of where we're going, you'll probably end up with somebody getting a job for a network, and part of the contract would be, these are within the rights of what we could do with your voice using AI. Tom, what are your thoughts on this? I know the BBC was amongst your lineup of things. Where's your greatest excitement as to how we can embrace AI, and what are your thoughts on how we do it fairly?
Well, I think, you mentioned in the last panel, AI is a very big space. It's ultimately a field of science. We kind of refer to AI now in modern sense. The world usually refers to LLMs, but there's a blue ocean of of AI and machine learning out there. And I think unpicking that and the sort of the core definitions of that I think is key, because there are some the generative spaces that we're very excited from a creativity standpoint, but so is the kind of analytical AI. What can you do more with? What data can you reason across? What insights can you draw using and leveraging AI? And then of course we've got other types of machine learning, like the TikTok RL algorithm for recommendation is one of the purest forms of machine learning. It's rocketed huge amounts of creators into the limelight over the last 10 years. So there's lots of different types of AI. I think that's one first thing. The second thing, again, is back to the kind of core definitions of intelligence. What do we really mean by intelligence? Intelligence is a very nuanced thing in itself. Creative intelligence, emotional intelligence, analytical, numerical intelligence. And so what can these, if we're all referring to LLMs, what are the greatest strong suits for generative AI, and where do they fall short? And identifying those early on, I think, is going to be critical and continue to be critical, and where humans can continue to play a pivotal part in that. And ultimately, where can we leverage AI to be better? And that's part of the work, for example, we're doing with some of these big media and publishing houses, is how can we use and leverage the immense numerical, analytical power of these AI models to amplify human creativity rather than ultimately replacing it. So I think it's just important that we do understand the nuances and a lot of the definitions and the words that are often bandied around quite quickly.
Yeah, and the idea of augmenting humans, because this is the latest tool of our generation, and this is one of the conversations that I would have with artists, is artists have always used their latest tools, and 15 years ago when I was covering AI art, they were saying, well, using AI is just the next tool, and it's still art, it's not cheating, we're just using what's available to us.
To jump in on that, it is so important that humans still involved in some regards, especially around creativity. One of our chief product officers, a man named Dave, and he is by his own definition a creative technologist. And he has this great understanding and phrase around ideas not included. So when you were younger and you got a Christmas present, it comes with batteries not included. Now everyone can be a creative technologist now. We all have the tools at our disposal to go and do it, but the creative part needs to come from us, the human side of the kind of chain, and we're the ones that understand what resonates and how it works. So the concept of ideas not included, but still being able to leverage technology is that kind of perfect harmony piece.
I can probably add to that as well. So we, for example, have a creative studio. So we have an art director, we have artists, and they build what the avatar is going to look like. So we actually are using traditional creative methods to build the avatar. We also then use voice actors. So we're not using AI voice, and we're remunerating those actors every time their voice is being used. So for us, the creative industry is really important in terms of protecting that. And AI is a tool that will amplify what's possible as opposed to replace what's possible.
Yeah, I wonder how different this conversation might be in 5 years' time, because you guys may all be doing everything in the way that you are, and that's great. But I think an idea like that, where voice actors are being used, it's great right now, and we want to stick to all of this. But I imagine in time, our expectations will actually change, and what we think is okay and right will change.
We've already seen that. I mean, consumer expectations have shifted so dramatically in such a short space of time. I don't think we've ever witnessed anything like it. And so you mentioned like personalization. We're not ultimately democratizing creativity with AI. We're democratizing the production of content, but the creativity taste is still something that ultimately is still going to be led very much, I think, by the human. And I think we're going to see now a greater quality at scale. And this is, again, work we've done in the past, is being able to, how can we give, say, production houses, media firms, whatever, more shots on goal, identifying who they're targeting, who they're trying to create content for, and being able to leverage AI to speak directly to them. And that hyper-personalization, as we will see in education and healthcare and other areas too, I think is super exciting.
It will all probably be our AI outsourcing under 5 years' time, and we won't have to. But no, I think, yeah, to the same point, I think we look at it from an entertainment point of view, and AI is providing personalization and scale, but it's also providing immersion. And I think, especially with, I guess, growing tech around AI and how people, consumers are starting to consume it, I think you'll see more entertainment-based content.
And I think the immersion point is really nice, because I thought this when you were talking earlier about the avatars. Yeah. And some of the experiences you were describing, they're just not things that you could do otherwise. Something you might go and do on a flat screen in a museum, it's not the same experience. So it's almost as though our brains are shifting in terms of what we expect, what we can engage with, and what can keep us glued to it. Because our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. I wonder if people are still going to be able to watch films that are 2.5 hours long, in 5 years' time.
I mean, first of all, coming back to what I think is not going to change, human rights won't change. So everything we do has to be about protecting what's right for the individual, and so working with individuals. So, and to that end, if I can continue to use examples, real life examples, is, we worked with Alan Turing's nephew, who wrote his books, to be the content database. So when you go and speak to Alan Turing, AI Alan Turing, the information is accurate. We work with the historians and head curators at Leeds Castle to make sure the Queen's accurate. And then also with the Prime Minister, we work with the Oxford University Press and Gladstone Libraries. So make sure the information is as accurate as possible is really important. Then coming on to your point about, attention span, absolutely. I mean, we're all doing it. We're all getting the dopamine hit from scrolling. We're all time poor. So now we want to be able to find out a piece of information that's most interesting to me, and going into a museum, and instead of just reading all the plaques, is actually asking the Queen, what was it like to have 16 pregnancies? You can ask that question and you will get an answer back for that. So it is about making information accessible to people in a way that we have become used to in so many other ways already.
Yeah, and bringing that history to life, I suppose, pulling together a lot of different information from different places in a way you otherwise couldn't. We had someone on from the Natural History Museum earlier today who was saying exactly that. Sorry, I'm with my microphone away. Someone from the Natural History Museum was talking about quite how much data and information they have, as well as a robot arm scanning everything that's physically there, to be able to pull all of this together, giving access to anybody, anywhere, but also, in the longer term, a more immersive experience possible there in flesh.
I think the only thing slightly connected to what you've been doing, but in a different field, is we've done a lot of work around synthetic audiences, synthetic personas, taking data and being able to essentially create clusters so that one could talk to an audience type, a profile, essentially in silico, and trial a press release or trial a piece of content on them before it goes out into the world. And I think we'll see it's still an evolving science, but there's still a lot of work that can be done there that you can actually always break down the fourth wall with your customer, which is, again, an area that is often overlooked when we're often talking about AI-generated music or the likes, but all the analytical AI components that go into that.
Yeah, that's fascinating, to work out what people actually want, although you are now creating this image to me of an audience just being synthetic for the real thing, which obviously is not the point of them. But how do we move forwards in creating these fully immersive, engaging experiences that fulfill our needs for that dopamine hit and everything that we want to get out of it with our lack of patience or tolerance for anything that takes time, while still making this fair on humans, while still making sure human creativity is at its heart? Because I do just imagine that in time, we're not going to care quite as much about that as we do right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's got to be binary. I think we sit up here talking about AI, it's not going to be for everyone. I think especially when it comes down to rights holders, people are still going to want legacy films, legacy content, real musicians. I don't think it should be a case of trying to displace or replace. I think it's every point we've spoken about today is what is the added value that we can provide with AI. And I think even the CMO of Netflix was talking about, this is probably about 2 years ago now, he was talking about how he wants a world where you come home and you will be able to type in a script and actually add actors to that you want to watch.
It sounds like hard work.
It does sound like hard work. Yeah, they're making you do all the work for it. But I think we're going to get to that point where it's still going to be, you're still going to have all the existing kind of content attributes that you have nowadays, but it's now a case of, like, to the point we spoke about already, what does the personalisation factor look like for me? How do I make this really bespoke to what I want to engage with, and how can I be entertained?
Yeah, and personalisation is really key, because we are starting to want and expect a lot of things to be more personalised, and it actually means, podcasts, for example, even the really successful ones don't have the huge figures that TV shows used to have. You don't need to have a huge number for something to be successful, because things are becoming more personalised and focused.
I think, drawing on what you just mentioned, the invention of the photography didn't undo painters or DJs didn't undo drummers. There will always be a world where these can kind of, coalesce and they can kind of, they can work together. I think, ultimately, again, back to these sort of definitions, a lot of the references to AI we're talking about here is AI as a tool, and how can therefore it amplify human creativity. I often use the analogy, in fact, of 400 years ago in Mozart's day, he would have some kind of nobleman in his kind of, in his house, he would roll a dice, and every face of that dice would correspond to a different motive on the piano. And depending on where that dice would roll, he would run off in a different direction, and in terms of in terms of a piece of music, and how you can use and leverage AI to be able to essentially unlock new creativity, new possibilities, new ideas that maybe humans on their own may not be able to, do alone.
Yeah, it's again augmenting the human, and you're right, there will be a spectrum of different things available, like, vinyl's come back in a big way. There will be a spectrum. I wonder how much AI or human, which is the premium experience. Right now, people may be paying more to be able to use the AI version of someone. But then you think of customer service, for example, moving into a totally different area for a second. Is the premium experience you get to speak to a human? Or does the AI get so good? Why on earth would you want to have to deal with the human? It really is a mix of things for different outlets.
Well, I think there'll be a premium on human-led content moving forward. I think you can't really put a price where you can on the amount of work, effort that goes into create any sort of creative output. With the difficulty we have with AI is the rush to zero, is the fact that you speak about production, is the fact that production is going to become such an asset that we can access so easily. It will be about who has the rights to it. We talk about human rights, we talk about rights infrastructure and everything else in between it. But I think the difficulty we have is the consumer and what they want. And I think at the moment, I came from the influencer space, and 10 years ago, when influencers started working with brands, everyone was like, "Oh, this is not authentic. I don't like this." Blah, blah, blah. And now it's like influencers are really authentic. If we work with them, our brand's going to be amazing. And it's the same issue that we have with AI. Everyone thinks that mainly because of media, deep fakes, how it's been perceived to begin with from a creative and cultural perspective, it's very negative in terms of the connotation.
Yeah.
But I think once there becomes harmony, there becomes better technical infrastructure, I think we'll see a massive lean in to what AI can do in terms of creative content. And I think that would then actually raise the cost of what human-made content and assets is providing.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of an 80-20 as well in all of that, which is 80% of the stuff that can be done by AI, and then the really important stuff gets done by 20% gets done by people. You can't replace that. The thing that scares me slightly was I went to SXSW in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and of course it's the 1% in San Francisco. They're doing everything you could possibly do with AI, and the CEO of SXSW talked about how he's replaced 80% of his workforce with AI agents.
Wow.
And so very different world.
Yeah, and you do hear this a lot, as you say, from San Francisco, a place where all the billboards are for AI and health tech companies just walking down the street regularly.
Yeah, very, very different way of thinking, and I don't know if everyone will adopt that approach, but it was slightly scary. Every billboard, like you said.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if I think about systems we built recently, are just about exactly that. We worked with a big record label to design an AI A&R, because they came to me and they said, well, our A&R teams are, at the moment, all they're doing every day is scrolling TikTok and looking through Spotify, and frankly, that's not the best use of an A&R team. It should be out there, going to build relationships, going to do the things that humans do best. And we designed an AI to be able to help, again, unlock so much time for them. Same for an architectural practice. They spend hours taking architectural drawings and turning them into structural form designs. And they should be designing beautiful houses. Let AI do that middle part. And it's about, again, how can we speed that piece up in the middle to allow greater human creativity?
Yeah, well, and this also comes back to, can we be more productive? Can we be more efficient? Or does this just mean, what do all the humans do? It's how does that play out? Which is, of course, a far bigger question and a totally different one to the one that we are here now to talk about. So how do we protect human creativity and make sure in this world where AI can do so many elements of it, and it stops us thinking about certain bits, albeit it is actually a huge skill to get AI to do things right. I think we can't ignore that in the equation. But how do we make sure that we as humans remain creative and capable, and that we don't lose any of that human spirit that's required to actually do those bits that you've all just discussed are so important to come from a human?
There's a lot of value, I think, when it's human created. That's the thing, it's becoming a premium. And I think that in many ways, you know, for creativity, that's going to be a great thing. The big question is not whether it's human versus AI, it's more a case of how does a human work with AI. I think that's kind of where my take is on all of that. It's never going to replace it. It's only a case of how to use the tool to get you what you want in the most effective way.
I'd say that AI has made me more creative in general. Like, I think, you know, I use a whole range of kind of content tools all the way through to Claude that has been probably one of the best co-founders you could ever have, if I'm honest. And I think that we're actually very privileged that we have something that can move at such speed. It still needs input, it still needs kind of inspiration about what we're doing. But I think already in a very short space of time, I would imagine that most people in this room have used AI in some regard in the last day, I would have thought. And you're doing things that you probably would have done without AI, but now you're finding much more optimization with doing it, and you can do things quicker, bigger, better. And so I think it's going to be a great asset for us. I think when you look at creativity from an individual point of view, we've been using Photoshop, we've been using variations of AI for quite a while. We're now just doing it at scale. And I think when you look at an advertiser, you know, who's caused the change? Advertisers have the budgets. They're the ones that are going to be looking in some regard to use AI within production to amplify, to do things they couldn't do before. I actually think it will unlock creativity no end.
Yeah, and what I love is when it fleshes out that creative idea. When you've got something you just need to jazz it up a bit, that's when it can actually really add the creativity. Tom?
Well, I think also we've got creativity in itself is not the end, it's like means to an end. What is the end goal? Is it to create content that people enjoy? For example, that's say the KPI. And if that's the case, how can AI and build on all the sort of periphery elements around creativity? How can it reason across data that humans just simply can't fathom, find patterns in that data, find nuanced ideas that we would otherwise overlook, and therefore unlock greater quality and greater creative output?
Lots to think about. Tom, Ben, Babita, thank you so much. Pleasure to talk to all of you.
Thank you.